President Biden's expanded child credit expired last month after Congress and the White House failed to secure its extension. That failure has resulted in an allegedly 41% increase in child poverty from December 2021 to January 2022, according to the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia University. More than 3.7 million children are in poverty without the monthly tax credit. Vulnerable communities suffered the most. Latino and Black children experienced the largest increase in rates of child poverty, according to data from the Center on Poverty at Columbia University.
The administration once touted the tax credit's ability to drop hunger rates significantly, and studies show it reduced financial stress and other hardships. As Washington Post White House economics reporter Jeff Stein notes, the newer policy proposals in Biden's agenda were never implemented since Build Back Better didn't make it through Congress. This makes the child tax credit unique since it was already in existence, though its extension ultimately depended on the passage of Build Back Better. So joining us to discuss is Rebecca Azor, a political journalist, and Denise Long, a business consultant and contributor at Newsweek. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And so, Rebecca, after the child tax credit went into effect, you not only saw poverty rates decrease, which is quite expected because poverty is a simple measure. It's how much income do you have relative to what is the poverty level. So you give more people more income, it puts them above the line. It's not any more complicated than that. So you knew that you were going to give more people money, you're going to see the poverty rate decrease. You also saw rates of anxiety, depression, all of these kind of numbers related to people's spiritual health, the misery, on top of hunger, also collapsed. And so right at our hands was the ability to reduce this incredible amount of suffering. And so a year into that, it just goes away, and here it's coming all back. The idea behind not extending it for another year or two was that once a good program like this is in place, Congress will always keep it going. And so therefore, we just can't do that because Congress doesn't know how to end these programs, yet they just ended it. So how do we square that circle? Apparently they do know how to end programs.
Yeah, apparently they do know how to end programs. So when it comes to programs that make it seem that the American people are going to be reliant or dependent on these tax credits, and it's going to make them lazy. These are one of those type of things too. These people get together, they talk about this, they think it's not important. They don't put that in. They don't put that into effect, or that idea that, oh wow, making sure that the children of America, right, are fed, are clothed, are taken care of. The parents, having to fund these children, are, their depression rates, people are more excited, people are more happy, families are more accommodating to each other, loving on each other. They don't put those things and look at those things and say, hey, we should keep this going. Those things are not important, right? And we see that all the time in Congress. We see that things that they say are not supposed to pass, or can't pass, all of a sudden, magically, this is what goes on. And what kills me the most is the people who support it, right? We already know off rip that Republicans, will support this. People who are right-leaning will support this kind of idea without having the whole picture. But just because this is what their party supports, they'll go ahead and support it. But knowing that people who are supposed to be representing more of a liberal view, something that's more for the people, Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, those people, that's what bothers me the most. Being an ally in something like this that takes away from the children lets me know that you aren't for the people. You never were for the people. Who does this actually help? It doesn't give me that bipartisan feel that they were throwing out, that they said would be good for this country, working together to make sure everybody is okay. No, this is just something that shows us that they are willing to take food from the mouths of especially Black and brown children.
Well, with the fate of Build Back Better so uncertain, money for Biden's shift away from fossil fuels waits on the sidelines. Investors across the country were ready to pour billions into new clean energy projects, but with the bill on ice, so are many massive clean energy investors. Denise, what do you think about the hold on Build Back Better? I would be probably a bit more skeptical that the sort of anxiety. I know we did speak to someone when we kind of poked some holes, right? Didn't we interview someone on the show who's talking about the the anxiety, depression
that was clean.
improvements.
I thought their data was clean on that.
Yeah, it's a little nebulous to me. What do you make of all this, Denise?
Well, several things. I'm amazed at the extent to which we can continue to serve the longstanding and multi-generational disadvantages that Black people, the majority of Black Americans, are descendants of slaves. The ways in which we continue to try to figure out how to solve these things through these sort of bandages. So here's the thing that I'm going to go ahead and say. I am moderate to right-leaning, independent, but a Republican on paper, right? What I would say is neither party is serving America well. No party is serving America well if we're not reinforcing our safety net and what we do. I think we need to stop trying to serve the needs of descendants of slaves through these piecemeal programs. We need to relaunch the Freedmen's Bureau and address what we didn't get addressed after Reconstruction was dismantled. We need to implement reparations to close the slavery lineage wealth gap. And then Black Americans will have what we need and what we've been deprived of for the last 150 years. We won't need a $2 trillion nonprofit budget. We won't need to give $90 million to Black Lives Matter, which gave very little of that money to the Black people who were being shot and killed in the streets. And so let's be real. If we're looking for solutions to socioeconomic problems, let's really address the reason for Black people, right? We're talking about people 3 to 20 generations into this thing called the American dream. Reparations is the answer to that. And then we can talk about small government. Then we can get to the stuff that's really the sort of culture war. But racism is not a culture war. It is the bread, butter, and red, white, and blue of America. I wanted to be able to debate taxation, right? Let's talk about that. I want to have, some good money invested to give to my children so we can talk about the taxes related to that, reparations and relaunching of the Freedmen's Bureau. If we're going to hit this thing, let's hit it right.
Hey, Freedmen's Bureau sounds good to me. Bring it back. Why not? All for that. On the question of the clean energy, it's fascinating because the left doesn't really think much about kind of private investment. You're almost not supposed to talk about private investment, private being bad, public being good. But there's an intersection between the public and private investment, and this dynamic is really being brought out as a result of Build Back Better not having passed yet, or the credits in it not having passed. And so you have all of these projects just sitting on the sidelines. You have, so as one woman put it, investors are waiting in the wings to deploy capital for clean energy, with this industry poised to be the major engine of 21st century prosperity. This is Leah Stokes, who's a professor at University of California, Santa Barbara. She said, without these government incentives, the capital won't get deployed. With them, we are poised to have a prosperous, clean energy economy. So Rebecca, is our system of government capable of kind of this kind of push forward, or are we just kind of throwing our hands up and giving up, and we're going to just leave? So the Washington Post article talks about warehouses that could be creating, say, clean energy batteries. They're just sitting there empty.
I think that they are capable of doing it. I think our government just doesn't do it. These are, like I said before, these are not considered important, I believe, to our government. They're going to focus on things that really don't matter, things, and with a lot of opportunity just sitting around, they're not going to grab at it. I think right now, what our government is focused on are just things like CRT and things like these are the things that they'll just say that, make America better if we start taking them away. And I will say, they don't even think about jobs that these empty warehouses can create and give, and in these different places. They don't think about those things because it doesn't benefit them and what they're pushing. I know, and I want to take it back to Denise's point. I do believe that reparations is good for us. But what the government does, like even now, they don't offer Black people much of anything, right? They don't offer Black people much of anything. And I'm not saying that we got to take what they give us, because these programs are little crumbs and things like that being fed, because this is what our government is focusing on. Not creating jobs for people, not nothing, especially for our community, our Black and brown community. So it would be great if we didn't have to take what was being given to us in these moments that assist our underserved communities that happen to be mostly Black and brown. But our government just focuses on things that really, really don't matter. And I wish that we had people who would push that on both sides of the fence. I don't care what color you represent, who you rep, or anything like that. If that was something, if helping us out, and so that we wouldn't have to rely on child tax credits and different programming or anything like that, was the government's actual agenda, then I think Black and brown people would be so much further. But what they're focused on aren't creating anything. Just like you said, warehouses just sitting there, and nothing's being really created. So I think they have they are capable of it, but they just aren't gonna do it. It's not important to them.
Yeah, so there is a call to action, right, to reinvigorate the manufacturing base in the United States, recognizing the ways in which inner ring suburbs and the like were just destroyed by divestment and such. And I want to make sure when I talk about reparations, I'm talking about descendants of slaves and Black people in particular, because that is the large population. Well, the debt is owed. It's not a gift. It's not a handout. It's basically a distribution of the funds that the United States government kept from our families. So it's a refund and not a handout.
Denise, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.